Peace and greetings, all. Amani na Salamu. I wanted to do a video for October Domestic Violence Awareness. October is a month, there's a few things celebrated in October, but Hoodoo Heritage Month, Breast Cancer Awareness, which I am an 8-year survivor of. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm grateful, grateful, grateful. And Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. To me, domestic violence doesn't get as much attention as it could. And I think it's because you're dealing with adults who are in situations or relationships that they basically stay in longer than they should. I think with children who are being abused or the elderly that's being abused, an elderly person that's confined to a bed cannot defend themselves. A child, a minor, they cannot defend themselves against their parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents. But adults, we have choices. So when you're in a relationship with someone who's violent and you stay longer than you should, it only makes it harder to leave. The abuser gets more attached to you and it's harder to let you go. That's not to blame anyone or point fingers at anyone, because I'm speaking from experience. Okay? When you see the signs, leave. Okay? As quickly as you see them, you need to leave. It doesn't get any better. And signs, I just don't believe that someone all of a sudden became violent. Someone wakes up one day and just decides they're going to be violent towards you. And there's more than one type of abuse. You can be physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually abused. And abuse is abuse. One isn't any less important or less valuable or less than the other. Abuse is abuse. One isn't more traumatic than the other. It's all abuse. If you're being talked to like a child, if you're being treated like a child, if you're afraid to be in your own home, if your stomach is in knots when you're around your spouse or your lover or your mate or your partner, that's abuse. And no one should be in their own home and feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way when you're just around someone. You should be able to be free no matter who you're with. So abuse is abuse. I also think that domestic violence doesn't get the attention that it could get because I have my own opinions about police officers and the judicial system. However, if you are constantly calling the police, but you keep going back to the same situation, usually in your area, there's a certain precinct or a certain section of police officers that cover your area. If these same police officers are being called to come to your house on a regular basis, one minute you're calling the police because of her or him, because women can be violent too. And then 3 weeks later, y'all are back together. He's in the backyard barbecuing. How would you see that? How would you look at that? You know, if you don't take it seriously, then no one else will take it seriously. And they won't take your cries. They won't take your cries for help seriously. Because they've come to your aid before and you went back to the situation. This is what I was talking about earlier. As adults, you have a choice. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that it's easy to leave. I'm not saying that it's easy to come up with a plan, but you have a choice. Abusers, and you know who you are. No one has to tap you on your shoulder and tell you that you're being abusive, that your behavior is over the top or too much, or that you're treating someone in your life, another adult, like a child. No one has to tell you that. If you are a violent person, if you are abusing someone, you need to get help. No matter what type of abuse it is, you need to get help. And the person that you're in a relationship with cannot help you. First of all, if you are an abuser, you don't even need to be in a relationship. You need to get help. However that looks, whatever you need, first you have to admit that you have a problem, and you have to get help for that. A partner cannot help you with that. They can suggest, but they cannot help you with that. If you are being abused, you need to help yourself. Tell someone, get a plan. If you see any signs, a person is possessive, They don't want you going anywhere, talking to anyone. You're afraid to even share anything with them. You're afraid to tell them anything. You're afraid of their reaction or their response. Any sign early on, leave immediately. Separate yourself from that person because it doesn't get any better. It only gets worse. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is to leave and the harder it is for them to let you go. This is what happens when someone leaves and the abuser finds them. It ends up either hurting them or hurting themselves or hurting everybody involved because they're too attached. And that only happens if you stay longer than you should. The signs are there. It's something they said. It's something they did. I just don't believe that you're with someone for 6 years, then you get married, and 2 years later, all of a sudden, they wake up violent. They said something, they did something, they pushed you, they nudged you. They did something before then that you ignored or overlooked, or you thought it wasn't going to happen again. And then it does. And you've already invested so much time in. Pay attention to the signs. Those are your warnings. It doesn't have to get physical before you figure out this may not be the best situation for me. Okay? Those are just my tips. There's people that I want to thank in my life that were with me when I was going through my domestic violent relationships, and I was in 2. Yes, I said 2. Because if you don't heal from the first one, you'll end up in another one. If you don't realize that it's not even necessarily their fault, it's the people that you're choosing. And there's something in you that thinks this is okay, this is what I deserve, or this is the best I could do. Yes, I said it. You think that that's the best that you can do. And that's not love. And we have to learn how to love ourselves as strongly as we want someone else to love us. Okay? So there's people in my life that I want to thank and show love to who had my back when I was in some very dark places. I will not name names as far as the people that I were in relationships with. It was 2, as I said. I will not call out their names. I will not disrespect anyone's family, or they have been forgiven and I moved on, but I do not want to disrespect anyone's family or offend anyone. But it is my story and it is the truth. And I know what happened, and it did happen, but I will be discreet and show respect to all of the families involved, because some of them still are family. So out of respect for them, I will not be naming any names or giving away too many details. But those of you who know me already know. Okay. But I do want to thank a few people that had my back during some really, rough times in my life. One of them would be my dad. My father passed away last September. And I miss him dearly, but he was one of the people that had my back. One particular incident, I just called my dad, and he came and picked me up. And at that time, my dad and I were not in the best place. I had forgiven him, but we hadn't gotten as close as we were, years before he passed. My parents divorced when I was 13, but I always knew where my father was, and he always knew where I was. And I could call him for anything. And the distance between us happened because I got angry. I was angry that my parents were divorced, and I didn't want to say anything to my father. I didn't want to talk to him. But I was a little older, and I called him and I said, I need to come and stay with you. He didn't ask me any questions. He came and picked me up. I went to stay at his place. And before we got there, he asked me, he said, did he put his hands on you? And I lied and I said no. He never asked me any more questions. I stayed the night. Got up the next morning and I had a bruise on my face. And I kept trying to, turn my face so he couldn't see it, So he takes me back home, and he said without saying it to the guy that I was in a relationship with, he gave him a look, like, you know who I am and you know what it is. I can't prove it. She told me you didn't, but you already know what it is. So I went to work that day and I put some makeup on. And a dear close friend of mine, a dear sister friend of mine, asked me, what is it? What's that on your face? Is that a hickey? And I lied and said, yeah, that's what that is. And she just kind of looked at me like I'm looking right now, but she didn't say anything. And I knew then that I was covering for someone that wasn't covering me, right? But that was only the beginning. Now, mind you, before it got to that point, I had already seen some things. Things had already taken place. I said that, there's no surprises. They don't wake up one day violent. And I was that woman that has said, like a lot of women, I wish a man would put his hands on me. I'm not going to let no man put his hands on me. And I was one of those women. And when it happened, the very first time it happened, I fought back. So I didn't think anything else of it. He grabbed me and, pushed me on the bed, and he was on top of me. We were tussling back and forth, and I got him off of me, and he jumped up and he went to take off running. And I picked up a crate. I put it all the way behind my back and tossed it all the way down the hall, and I hit him in the back as he was running out. And my mindset was like, you crazy? Put your hands on me. So I didn't think anything of it after that. It was like I was raised to protect myself. My mother and my father taught me to be independent, to protect myself. My mother was a fighter. My aunts are fighters, so I was like, I'm not going to let a man put his hands on me. And then when he did, I was in shock. But my first reaction was to fight back. But it would happen after that. And after a while, I just lost my fight. I was mentally exhausted. So that was a particular situation with my dad. And it only got worse. And when the situation got extremely severe, I called my mother. My mother was in another state. I have relatives all over, but no one was in the same city. So when this particular incident happened, I called my mother, and my mother called her best friend. And her best friend was in Sanford. She and her husband. Now, this woman and her husband have known me since I was 2 years old. And Mr. and Mrs. Moore showed up. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know if the person was still violent, if they were still up and, being in a rage. He didn't know. So he came with heat. And they took me to the hospital to make sure that I didn't have any injuries or any broken bones or fractions in my face. And they took me to Womack, where I would later work. And I always wondered, will they recognize me? Will they remember my name? When I started working with the Department of Defense, and we would go to Womack. I always wondered, are they still working here? Would they be wandering in the hall and see me and be like, that might have been? But my face was so bruised and battered, my aunt didn't even recognize me. But it was always in my head. So Mr. and Mrs. Moore take me to the hospital. They get me checked out. The next day, my aunt, they take me home. He's not there. My aunt picks me up. She comes from where she lives, and she brings my cousin with her. So my Aunt Dora and my cousin Jerome show up to come and get me. And my aunt stood there for what felt like 20 minutes and couldn't say a word. My face was just that battered. And she took me to my Uncle Ronnie's house. And then she took me to who made sure he got arrested. And then she took me to her house. And my dad had heard about it because my mother was calling everybody. Look, so she was in Kentucky. She's trying to get everybody to me. So by the next day, my aunt takes me to her house, and my dad comes to my cousin's truck, and I'm sitting in the truck. I'm sitting in the front seat, and he opens the door. He and my sister Riddell opened the door, and when they saw my face, he just broke down in tears. And he said I had no idea that it was that serious. And I go into my aunt's house and I lie down, and my Uncle Eric comes in. And my Uncle Eric says, I'm not trying to be a Buffalo Soldier. I'm not trying to be no hero. But all I need is 2 words. Either a yes or a no. He said, and I'll take him out of here. He said, that's all I need. So what are we going to do? Do you want me to take him out of here? And I said, no. It couldn't have gotten any worse for me than it already was. I didn't need that too, because I knew my Uncle Eric was serious. So to my dad, I love you and I miss you. My sister Riddell, I love you and I miss you, who thought the world of me. To my Aunt Dora, to my cousin Jerome, for just coming to my aid, for checking on me. My mother just made a phone call. She made phone calls and everybody showed up for me, and I appreciate it, and I never forgot it. It's been over 20 plus years and I never forgot. And I've never had an opportunity to tell you because I never wanted to talk about it. To my Uncle Eric, thank you, because I know you meant what you said, which is why I said no, because I know you would have done whatever you had to do to make sure it didn't happen to me again. And I thank you. So Auntie let my Uncle Eric know, that I posted this video, but I am going to text him later on. There's a dear friend of mine who is, I don't know what that was, but there's a dear friend of mine who, it was 2 incidents that I could think of with her. And one of them I called her because I never knew, it wasn't every day, but I never knew when it was coming. I could say anything. He could be upset about something. Any little thing could set him off. And sometimes I just avoided it altogether. I knew to not say anything to trigger anything because I knew where it would go or where it could go. There were countless incidents, but this particular one, he started moving like he was just getting, antsy, and I was like, here we go. So I called her and I said, I need to get out of here. And she said, okay. She said, well, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. And I don't want to know, but I got to get out of here. And she said, I'm on my way. And so she comes with a mutual male friend of ours. And she shows up, and she's that sister that'll fight a man, woman, child. She doesn't care. I always called her my bodyguard. And we're the same age, but I would always say that's my bodyguard, because she would handle it. And he knew that. So when she shows up, with our mutual friend, they're going back and forth. She's like, I've seen bruises on her before. I'm sick of this. What's going on? I'm not going to let you do anything to her while I'm here. And she's like, get your things if you need to get something. So I start grabbing things and I jump in the car and I go straight to her house. I didn't ask, can I stay? I didn't ask, is it okay? I went to her house and that was it. I didn't know until later on that evening that she left her job and she stopped and got a friend and they came over. I didn't know that. I didn't know that she would drop whatever she had going on for me. And she did. She didn't say, well, girl, give me a couple of hours or I'll see what I can do. Maybe I'll call somebody. She left her job and showed up. And it wouldn't be the first time. There was another incident that I think of when I think of her. And she said to me, we were having a conversation. I don't even know how it came up, but she said to me, I did think you were crazy. I just never wanted to tell you. But I never told you that I thought you were crazy until it happened to me. And I'm going to share a part of her story, because she said that when she was being attacked by a man that she had a child with, she was outside. Neighbors were watching. She was in the driveway, being beaten and kicked and stomped while people watched. And she had her baby in her arms. And she was curled up in a knot holding her baby to protect her baby from being hurt. And she said, the only voice I could hear in my head was yours. She said, I heard you saying over and over again, if you cannot fight back, then protect yourself. This sister would allow me to stay in her home whenever I was running for my life. She would always open her home up to me. She would bring her daughters into her room so that I would have a bed to lie in. She never asked me, well, how long are you going to be here? Y'all need to figure it out. She never said, I think you crazy. I wouldn't be with him if I were you. She never dropped those words. It couldn't be me. It wouldn't be me if I were you. She never said those words to me. Always opened her home to me. Every single time I called on her, she said 2 words. Come on. Because I promise you he's not coming here. And I can promise you he never did. But to my Princess Shuri, to my Shura Robinson, for having my back every single time I called on you, for never talking to me like I was nothing, for never talking to me like I was stupid or I was dumb or I was crazy, but for giving me a safe place to land whenever I was running or whenever I felt like I was falling and I didn't know where else to go or what else to do. You always had my back. And for that, I thank you. I've never forgotten, and I love you. I pray that you're not offended by me sharing that part of your story, but I never forgot it. And you have nothing to be ashamed of. And I thank you. I got to give a shout out to Greg Allen, because he connected me with a woman that I already knew, but we weren't as close as we are now. And that brought us closer. But he came to me because I'm a writer and a poet, and he came to me and he said, I know a sister that wants to tell her story and she needs help. And he said, I thought about you. He said, I got somebody that can help you with that. So I said, well, who is it? And he told me her name. And I said, okay, cool. So I got in contact with her. We met up at a restaurant. She wanted to tell her story. I had no idea what it was, but I said, I had in my mind, she can tell me what her story is, and I'm going to put it in a poem form, and she can share it, with whomever. So we got together. She handed me her notebook. We laughed and talked, and I was reading her story. It wasn't the whole story, but it was enough. And I was stuck. I couldn't believe everything I was reading. And I was like, you want me to tell this? You want me to help you tell this? And she said, yeah, that's my life. That's what I've been through. And so I'm sitting there, stuck. And so I shared with her what I wanted to do. I said, I want to put it in poem form and you can share it. And she said, okay. And I said, this is really going to be healing for you. And she looks at me and she said, it's going to be healing for you too. And I said, excuse me? And she said, this is going to be healing for you too. You need to heal. You need to tell your story. Now, she said this, for those of you who know, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to her, I hadn't said anything to anyone about it. If you weren't already in my life, there's no way you would have known, because I didn't share it with anybody. I never sat down and talked to anybody about it. And the second relationship I was in that was violent, I didn't tell anybody, not even my mother, who at the time lived one street over from me. So for her to tell me, it was my time to tell my story. That blew my mind. And so we sat there a while, talking, and we agreed that that's what we would do. That I would write it in a poem form, and she would tell her story, and I would tell mine. And it changed my life. We would get together and we would go over it, and we would cry. I was like, how are we going to get in front of people and share this if we can't even get through, going over it? But we did. We got through it, and it was freedom. There's something about writing down your life or writing down what you're going through. That's why I think people tell you it's a good thing to journal, because when you're writing it, you look at your life is looking back at you. It's like some people will say, well, I've been doing such and such for a long time, but once I said it out loud, it hit differently. It's the same thing to me it's almost like, let's say you're in a relationship with someone that doesn't respect you. Well, you deal with it every day, but the minute you say out loud, you know what, I'm with a man that really doesn't respect me. I'm with a woman that has no respect for me whatsoever. It's like the minute you say it out of your mouth, it really hits you. You deal with it every day, but the minute you say it out loud, it changes. So when you write something down, you write your life down, you write your thoughts down. When you look at your thoughts are looking back at you. It's like a mirror. You can't run from it. This is what it is. You wrote it. This is how you feel. This is what you went through. And when it looks back at you, you see it totally different. Totally differently. Totally different. And that's what it was. When I write, I put my pen to paper, or my pen to paper, or my pencil to the paper, or I'm typing. I don't think about it. I don't hesitate. I write. I type. It comes out. It's a gift. It's not something that I trained to do. It's not something that I ever thought I would do. It's not something that I set out to do. It's not something that I sit around and try to work on. It is a gift. I sit down, it comes out, that's it. You can tell me your name and 3 things about you, and I'll write a poem about you without having ever met you. I may not even know you. You can tell me the name of a friend and tell me 2 things about them, and I'll write. It is a gift. That's what it is. But that thing, writing that down, it took me weeks. And I mean, I did bits and pieces at a time before I could get it completely done, because it was draining to face it, because like I said before, I never talked about it. I went through it, survived it, but I never talked about it. So that changed my life. So to my sister Tammy Gregg, I love you, and thank you, Miss Living Proof. She got t-shirts for us. We went all out. We got the little music stands so we can put our poetry on, and we shared our story, and it changed my life because I had never told it. And I'm grateful that I did. I want to honor a dear sister of mine who I grew up with since elementary school. She is no longer here. Valencia, her daughter Kirsten, or Kirsten's father. Kirsten's father came in one night. He took Valencia's life. He took their daughter's life, and then he took his own life. So it's so important when you see the signs to do the best you can to separate yourself from someone who is violent, because your life is worth it. You're worth it. So to everyone that I mentioned, I got to mention Mike. Mike, I don't know your name on Facebook now, but you showed up with Kenny, my brother Kenny Supreme. There was an incident. I called my mother, and my brother answered the phone. He could tell I was nervous and I was shaking, and he started breathing heavy like, yo, I don't know what's going on, but I got to get to my sister. He didn't have a car at the time, so he called Mike, and he and Mike showed up. And I promise you, after they got there, there was never any more violence after that. My brother wasn't there the first time. There was an altercation between me and the person I was in a relationship with. But that particular night, I called my mother. My brother was at my mother's house. He answered the phone, left a note for my mom, and then my mom and my stepfather showed up. So to my brother, to my mom, the tone, thank you. Because I don't know what your conversations may have been like when I'm not around, but I know the three of you always had my back, my family. You always had my back. You always supported me. You always loved on me. To my mother for always teaching me to be strong. You taught me to be strong. You taught me to be independent. You always had my back no matter what. You never came at me as if I was pitiful or pathetic. You wrote it out with me. Because I've learned that if someone has made up their mind that they're going to stay, nothing you can say will make them leave. And if they do leave, they're going to return if they're not ready to leave. If someone has made up their mind that they're going to leave, nothing you can say will make them stay. So all you can do as a family member is just love on your family. If they're in a toxic or abusive relationship, love on them as much as you can. But just know that if you are in an abusive relationship, sometimes you have family and even friends that they can't sit back and watch it. And sometimes they will intervene and it may not end well for the abuser. So the best thing that you can do is save yourself. Separate yourself from violence and abuse, disrespect, and neglect. It is not worth it. Being alone is not that bad. Because black eyes hurt. Busted jaws hurt. Bruises hurt. Broken bones hurt. And none of that is love. Fortunately, I never had any broken bones, but I had enough to know that I can't do that anymore. I have to show some love to my big love, my husband, who had his own way of looking at abuse and women in abusive relationships. And please keep in mind that women can be abusive too. Women can be manipulative and controlling. And if they're with a man who was raised not to put his hands on a woman, they take advantage of that. Like, if you know you can put your hands on a man and he's not going to defend himself or not going to hurt you or subdue you or hit you back. So women take advantage of that. Women can be abusive too. Men can be abused too. If it's not physically, it can be in other ways. And when I first got married, my husband had the mindset, he looked at women a certain way if they stayed in a relationship that was abusive. And I had to explain to him, you don't know why they got into it. You don't know why they stay. You don't know their circumstances. And as easy as it is to say when you're standing on the outside looking in, well, just leave. Like I said before, if you stay too long, it's harder and harder to leave. You get attached, they get attached. Then sometimes you have all these bills together. Then you may have kids. It just gets harder and harder to leave and walk away. And if they're an abusive person, most of the time they're manipulative and they're controlling. So you may not even be working. So where are you going to get the money from to leave? And if you've got several children, how am I going to run in the middle of the night with four children? How am I going to up and run in the middle of the night with 3 or 4 kids? And I'm trying to keep them quiet, or I got a baby, or I'm pregnant. If you're a man and you're the one holding down the bills, how am I supposed to leave without her trying to track me down because, well, I can't pay the bills. I need you here. I need you here. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And you go back. Well, I'm just going to go back this time. I'm just going to go back this time. I'm just going to help out. What if you're the man at home taking care of the babies and she's abusive? And you don't want to tell nobody because you're a man. I'm here taking care of the kids and she treat me like I'm a child. And you're actually afraid of what she might do. Abuse is abuse. She may withhold money from you. She may withhold food from you. She may have all of your information. She may be blackmailing you with some information that she had on you before that maybe nobody else knows because you haven't shared it. You may be afraid to even eat. You don't know what she might be doing to your food. You never know. Abuse is abuse. So Get out of the situation as quickly as you can. Don't let it go on any longer than it needs to go. If you see signs, hear signs, listen. Not only when people tell you who they are, believe them. When people show you who they are, believe them. When people say certain things, respond a certain way, lose their temper about small things, lose their temper with you, take things out on you, how they deal with their other friends, how they deal with their family members. If a man talks about what he did physically to another woman that was violent, listen to that. Pay attention to that. Watch how he deals with other women. Watch how a woman deals with other men. Listen to the way she talks about men in general. Does she respect men at all? What makes you think she's going to respect you? The same thing with the man. If he has no respect for women in general, if the only woman he respects is his mama, your life is worth it. You're worth it. We all deserve to have peace when we're in our own homes, peace in relationships. Disagreements is not the same thing as somebody getting up in your face, being loud and belligerent, belittling you in front of people, belittling you when you're at home, talking to you like you're a child, treating you like a child, neglect, disrespect, manipulation, fear. It's exhausting. It's draining mentally and physically. You're worth it. You're worth it. None of us deserve that. There's a saying, I don't look like what I've been through. And I used to say that too. And I get it. But I don't say that anymore. And I don't agree with that anymore. I do look like what I've been through. You just don't see my scars. And I don't try to hide them. I just live with them. And the memories of what I've been through don't go away. They just don't hurt as much. I don't cry as much. I don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it as much. But the memories don't go away. But I do look like what I've been through. I look like victory. I've been through that. I look like survival. I've been through that. I look like championships because I am a champ. I look like winning because I am a winner. And what does a winner look like? A winner looks like you. You get up every day and you face life and you face challenges and you survive to tell about it. You encourage someone else, even though you've been through something. You may be in the middle of something and you're encouraging someone else to get up and do what they need to do. You're taking care of your children. You're holding down your home. You're encouraging other people. You're mentoring someone. You're doing the very best that you can do at your job or your career. You're growing and learning. Taking care of an elderly person. Taking care of a child who may be neglected. You're winning every day. You survive your trauma. You're facing your trauma. You're getting help for your trauma. You're winning every day. Every day you get up and make it. Every day you get up and look in the mirror and say, I can do it today just like I did it yesterday and I'm going to do it better tomorrow. You're winning. So, thank you to everyone whom I mentioned. I love you and I thank you. Continue looking over me, Daddy and Riddell. I know you're watching it with me with Grandma, and I love you all, and I miss you all. To my mom, to my brother, to Cheryl, Tammy, my Uncle Eric, to my auntie, my cousin Jerome, and my Uncle Ronnie. Rest in peace, Uncle. I love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you for your long attention. If you watched this video to the end, I appreciate it. It was something that I wanted to do to honor and thank the people in my life who've been there for me during a very rough time in my life. I wanted to do it during October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It was just something that was on my heart to do, and I wanted to do it. Thank you for listening. I hope I said something that resonated with you. I hope I encourage you to move differently, to date differently, to pay attention to what people say and what they do. Look for the signs. It's never too late to save your life. Okay? and just keep winning because I know I am. So be beautiful, be great, be well, be your best because you are. Keep winning, keep winning, keep winning because you too are a winner, just like me. Be well. Much respect. Peace.